It started with the sound of a diesel engine tearing through the morning mist, shattering the peace of a Tuesday morning. I was standing on the porch of a farmhouse that had been in my family since 1895, holding a mug of black coffee that was quickly losing its warmth. Down at the south perimeter, where the ancient stone wall meets the manicured, soulless green lawn of the Sovereign Hills gated community, a yellow excavator was chewing up the earth. Standing next to it, directing the operator like she was conducting a symphony of destruction, was a woman in a neon-pink windbreaker and white capri pants. Patricia, the HOA president, the woman who had made it her life's mission to turn my existence into a spreadsheet of violations I didn't commit. I put the coffee down. I didn't run. I didn't scream. I walked inside, put on my steel-toed boots, and grabbed the binder. Not a gun, not a bat. A 3-inch thick binder filled with topographical surveys, water table analysis, and a 1902 deed signed by a circuit court judge. By the time I reached the perimeter, the excavator bucket was hovering over a 200-year-old heritage oak tree. My property marker. Turn it off! I didn't shout. I projected. It's a voice you learn when you spend 20 years shouting over drilling rigs and rushing water as a hydrologist for the Department of the Interior. The operator hesitated, his hand hovering over the joystick. Patricia whipped around, her face contorted in that familiar mix of entitlement and manufactured outrage. "You have no business here, Arthur!" she shrieked, her voice piercing the morning air like a dental drill. "This is an active construction zone for the Sovereign Hills Community Aquatic Center. You are trespassing on future HOA land." Future HOA land. I crossed the property line. The real one, not the one she imagined, and slapped a laminated map on the side of the excavator track. "Patricia, if this bucket touches that oak tree, you aren't just committing property damage, you're violating a federally protected watershed easement. And since I'm the guy who wrote the survey on it, I can promise you the EPA fines will cost more than your house." She laughed. It was a dry, humorless sound. "Your little drawings don't matter, Arthur. The board voted. We have the eminent domain paperwork pending. The pool goes here. The view requires it." "Pending isn't approved, Patricia," I said, locking eyes with the operator. "And buddy, if you dig here, you're going to hit the primary aquifer for the entire county. You want to be the guy who poisoned the town's water supply on a Tuesday morning?" The operator killed the engine. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with the chirping of birds and the sound of Patricia gasping for air like a fish on a dock. "You will regret this," she hissed, pointing a manicured finger at my chest. "We have lawyers. We have the city council. We will bury you in paperwork until you beg to sell us this dirt heap." I picked up my laminated map. "Patricia, I spent 2 decades studying how bedrock shifts under pressure. You have no idea what you're standing on." I didn't know it then, but I was right in more ways than one. They weren't just trying to build a pool. They were trying to cover up a geological crime scene, and I was the only one with the shovel to dig it up. Before I tell you how I dismantled a corrupt HOA using nothing but dirt samples and property law, I want to know, what is the pettiest thing a neighbor has ever done to you? Drop him a story in the comments below. I'm reading from the porch in Oregon, and I want to see where you guys are watching from. To understand why Patricia wanted my land so badly, you have to understand Blackwood Ridge. My great-grandfather bought these 40 acres when this part of the state was nothing but timber and grit. He planted apples, black twig, Arkansas black, varieties you can't find in a supermarket anymore. He built the farmhouse with his own hands. For generations, the ridge was a working orchard. It smells like rain, fermented apples, and old wood. It's messy, it's wild, and it's mine. Then came the sprawl. About 5 years ago, a developer named Prestige Worldwide Realty, yeah, really, bought the 500 acres of forest surrounding my ridge. They clear-cut everything.
They flattened the hills, filled in the creeks, and put up 300 modern farmhouse-style McMansions made of particle board and ego. They called it Sovereign Hills. Suddenly, my quiet mornings were filled with the sound of leaf blowers and the sight of gray luxury SUVs. I became the eyesore. My barn wasn't rustic charm to them. It was blight. My unpaved driveway was dust pollution. And leading the charge was Patricia Vance. Patricia was a 50-year-old stay-at-home consultant who ran the HOA like a shadow government. Her husband, Greg, was on the City Planning Commission. A dangerous combination. One had the time to complain, the other had the power to punish. It started small. A letter in the mail claiming my compost pile was attracting vermin, which it wasn't. Then complaints about the noise of my tractor, which I only ran on weekends. But the real war began 6 months ago. I was in the local hardware store buying PVC pipe for an irrigation repair when I overheard Greg Vance talking to the store manager. "Yeah, Phase 2 is going to be spectacular," Greg was saying, puffing out his chest. "Infinity pool, clubhouse, the works, right on the ridgeline. Best sunset view in the county." I paused. The ridgeline. The ridgeline was my property. The only flat land Sovereign Hills had was in the valley floor, which was basically a swamp they'd paved over. To get a view, they needed elevation. To get elevation, they needed my orchard. I walked out of that store with a bad feeling in my gut. I went home and pulled the original deeds. My property lines were clear. Stone wall to stone wall. 3 days later, the offer arrived. A lowball offer, insultingly low. Market value, the letter said, offering me agricultural land prices for what was now prime residential real estate. I sent a 2-word reply, "Not sale." That's when the citations started. Patricia didn't just want the land. She wanted to bankrupt me, so I had to sell. I received $5,000 in fines in 1 week. Fugitive dust emissions, $1,000. Visual nuisance, rusty farm equipment, $500. Improper drainage affecting HOA common areas, $2,500. That last one was the kicker. They claimed my irrigation runoff was flooding their tennis courts. I'm a hydrologist. I know water. Water flows downhill. Their tennis courts were uphill from my irrigation ditch. Physics literally made their claim impossible, but facts don't matter to a Karen with a stamp. I went to the first HOA meeting I was invited to. Technically, I wasn't a member, but they summoned me as an external party of interest. The meeting room smelled of cheap perfume and floor wax. The board sat at a long table on a raised platform. Patricia was in the center, gavel in her hand. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, not looking up from her papers, "we are prepared to waive these fines if you agree to the easement regarding the South Ridge. We just need 15 feet for a walking path." "A walking path?" I asked, leaning against the doorframe. Greg said it was a pool. Her head snapped up. "It is a multi-use recreational area, and it's for the good of the community. You are holding back progress." "I'm holding back my property line, Patricia. And regarding the drainage fine, water doesn't flow uphill unless you've repealed the laws of gravity in your bylaws." "We have an engineer's report," she shouted, "from a certified city expert." Let me guess. Is the expert's name Greg? The room went silent. I saw a few neighbors exchange looks. I walked out, but I knew this wasn't over. They weren't just annoying neighbors. They were desperate. And desperate people make mistakes.
2 weeks after the excavator incident, things got dirty. Literally. I woke up to find my primary irrigation creek bone dry. This creek, Blackwood Run, comes down from the mountains, cuts through the HOA land, which used to be forest, and feeds my orchard. I have senior water rights dating back to 1898. In the West, you don't mess with a man's water. You can shoot a man for stealing your horse, but stealing his water? That's worse. I hiked up the property line, tracing the creek bed. About a half-mile up, inside the HOA territory, I found it. They hadn't just blocked the creek, they had diverted it. A massive earthen berm had been bulldozed across the stream, forcing the water into a large, newly dug retention pond that sat right behind the Vance's massive house. They were using my agricultural water to fill a decorative koi pond the size of a swimming pool. I took photos, GPS coordinates, flow rate measurements. I documented the sediment buildup. Then I saw him. A guy in a cheap suit and a hard hat that looked like it had never seen a construction site, holding a clipboard. He was standing with Patricia by the berm. I stayed in the tree line, zoomed in with my camera. "It's holding, Mrs. Vance," the man said, "but the pressure is building up behind the dam. If we get a heavy rain, just make sure it doesn't flow to his orchard. I want his trees to turn brown. If the orchard looks dead, the city can condemn it as a fire hazard. Then we seize it for safety reasons." My blood ran cold. They weren't just stealing water, they were trying to kill my livelihood to manufacture a legal loophole. I stepped out of the trees. "You know," I said, my voice startling them both, "conspiring to commit insurance fraud and agricultural sabotage is a felony. Doing it while stealing federal water? That's prison time." Patricia shrieked. The man in the hard hat dropped his clipboard. "This is private property," Patricia yelled. "Actually," I said, stepping onto the berm, "this is a navigable waterway. I have right of access to maintain my flow." "And who is this? The certified expert?" The man stammered. I'm the site consultant. Dave Miller." "Dave Miller," I repeated. "I know a Dave Miller. Lost his surveyor's license in '09 for falsifying floodplain data? That you?" The color drained from his face. Bullseye. "Get off my land," Patricia screamed. "I'm calling the police." "Go ahead. I'll wait. I'd love to show the sheriff this illegal dam." She didn't call the police. They retreated to her house. I spent the next hour tearing that berm down with my bare hands and a shovel I'd brought. When the water finally broke through, rushing back towards my thirsty trees, it felt like a victory. But as the water drained from their illegal pond, I noticed something on the banks. Something that shouldn't be there. The soil wasn't just mud. It was gray, sludge-like, and it smelled sweet, like antifreeze and rot. I took a sample. I'm a geologist, not a chemist, but I know bad dirt when I see it. This wasn't just construction runoff. This was something old. I went back to my farmhouse and pulled up the historical geological surveys of the area, the deep ones, not the ones developers show you. Before Sovereign Hills was a forest, and before it was a development, in the 1960s, there was a rumor of an illegal dumping ground for a local chemical plant that went bust. I looked at the map. The dump site was marked reclaimed in 1985, but the coordinates of the old dump site were exactly where Patricia's house and the proposed community pool were sitting. They weren't trying to build a pool just for the view. They were trying to cap a leak. If you're enjoying this takedown of a power-tripping HOA, hit that like button right now. It helps the channel grow and lets me know you want more stories like this. And if you haven't subscribed yet, click that bell. You don't want to miss the ending of this one.
The puzzle pieces were falling into place, but I needed proof. Hard proof. I took the soil sample to an old buddy of mine at the State University lab. While that was processing, I started digging into the Sovereign Hills development permits. Public records are a beautiful thing if you know how to read them. Most people see boring PDFs. I see crime scenes. I found the original geotechnical report filed by Prestige Worldwide Realty 5 years ago. It was signed by, you guessed it, Dave Miller, the disgraced surveyor. The report stated, soil composition, stable loam, No hazardous materials detected. Bedrock depth, 15 feet. Then I pulled my grandfather's journals. He'd mapped this whole valley. His entry from June 1968 read, "The chemical trucks are back at the North Ravine, dumping barrels at night. Ground is soft there. Sinkholes forming near the limestone shelf." The North Ravine was exactly where Sovereign Hills Main Street was now. I realized the scale of the scam. Greg Vance, the husband, and the developer had built multi-million-dollar homes on top of a toxic, unstable landfill. They had falsified the soil reports to get the permits. But now the ground was shifting. That's why they needed my ridge. My ridge is solid granite. It's the anchor point. If they could seize my land, they could drive steel pylons into my granite and tie back their sliding, sinking hill to my solid rock. The pool was a cover story. They needed a massive concrete foundation to act as a retaining wall to keep Patricia's house from sliding into a toxic sinkhole. If they admitted the truth, property values would hit zero. The lawsuits would be endless. They had to steal my land to save their skins, and they had to do it fast. The lab results came back 3 days later. High concentrations of benzene, lead, arsenic. The gray sludge I found in the creek, it wasn't mud. It was the landfill liquefying. The retention pond they dug had punctured the old clay cap of the dump. They had unleashed the toxic soup, and it was leaking into the groundwater. My groundwater, the town's groundwater. I had 'em, but I didn't just want to stop 'em. I wanted to nuke 'em from orbit. I needed to lure them into a trap. I sent a letter to the HOA board. "Dear Patricia, I am willing to discuss the sale of the South Ridge. However, I require a public town hall meeting to discuss the terms and the environmental impact as required by county law. If you agree to a live, recorded meeting, I will bring the deed." They took the bait instantly. They thought I had broken. They thought the fines and the harassment had worked. They scheduled the meeting for that Friday night at the Sovereign Hills Clubhouse. I spent Thursday night printing large format maps. I overlaid the 1960s aerial photography of the dump site with the current street map of the HOA. I highlighted the benzene plume. I printed Dave Miller's revoked license. I printed Greg Vance's financial disclosures showing he was a silent partner in the construction firm hired to build the pool. I packed my briefcase. It felt heavier than usual. It was filled with the truth. The clubhouse was packed. It seemed the entire neighborhood had shown up to see the crazy orchard guy finally bend the knee. Patricia was wearing a white suit, looking like the cat who ate the canary. Greg was shaking hands, looking smug. "Ladies and gentlemen," Patricia started into the microphone, "tonight is a historic night. We are finally resolving the obstruction that has delayed our beautiful community aquatic center. Mr. Blackwood has seen reason." She gestured for me to come to the podium. I walked up. I placed my briefcase on the lectern. I didn't smile. "I'm not here to sell," I said into the mic. The room murmured. Patricia's smile faltered. "Excuse me? You agreed to—" "I agreed to discuss the terms, and the terms are simple. You all need to evacuate your homes. Immediately." Laughter. Mocking laughter from the back. "This man is mentally unstable," Greg shouted from the side. "Cut his mic." "I wouldn't do that, Greg," I said, pulling out a remote clicker, "because I'm live streaming this to the state EPA website, and they are watching." I clicked the button.
The projector screen behind me lit up. Slide 1. The 1968 photo of the chemical trucks dumping barrels where the clubhouse now stood. The room went silent. Slide 2. The current map overlaid on the dump site. I are sitting on 50,000 tons of industrial waste, I explained calmly. The soil report, filed by your husband, Patricia, claimed this was clean fill. It was signed by Dave Miller, a man legally banned from surveying in this state. I pointed to Greg. You built these houses on a lie, and now the lie is leaking. Slide 3. The photos of the gray sludge in the creek, the lab results. Benzene, arsenic, lead. It's in the water table. It's under your lawns. And the reason Patricia wants my ridge isn't for a pool. Slide 4. A structural engineering diagram I had drawn up. It's for a retaining wall, because the landfill is collapsing. Your houses are sliding downhill. Without my granite to anchor them, Sovereign Hills is going to become a sovereign landslide within 6 months. The room erupted. It wasn't anger at me anymore. It was panic. People were turning on the board. Is this true, Greg? My kids play in that dirt. Greg was sweating, loosening his tie. This is hearsay. This is a fabrication. Is it? I clicked the final slide. It was a video, a drone shot I had taken that morning using a thermal camera. It showed a massive heat plume rising from the ground behind Patricia's house, chemical decomposition generating heat. The ground is cooking, Greg. You punctured the cap when you dug that illegal pond. Patricia looked at Greg. Greg looked at the door. Then the doors opened. But it wasn't residents leaving. It was 4 men in windbreakers with bold yellow letters on the back. EPA, Criminal Investigation Division. And behind them, 2 state troopers. I had sent the full dossier to the regional EPA office on Tuesday. They take aquifer contamination very seriously. Gregory Vance, Patricia Vance. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding conspiracy to violate the Clean Water Act, wire fraud, and massive environmental endangerment. Patricia didn't scream this time. She slumped into her chair, the fight completely gone. Greg tried to run out the back fire exit, but a trooper was waiting for him. As they were cuffed and let out, the room was dead silent, save for the clicking of my projector remote. I looked at the crowd of stunned homeowners, and I said, I suggest you all call your insurance companies. Tonight. I packed up my briefcase and walked out. The air outside tasted sweet, like apples, and justice.
The fallout was nuclear. Sovereign Hills was declared a Superfund site. The property values didn't just drop, they vanished. The houses were condemned. It turns out you can't live on top of a toxic waste sponge. Prestige Worldwide Realty declared bankruptcy, but the feds pierced the corporate veil. Greg Vance is currently serving 12 years for fraud and racketeering. Patricia got 5 years for her role in the cover-up and the attempted destruction of my federally protected waterway. The residents sued the developer and won a massive settlement, enough to relocate. The McMansions were torn down. The EPA came in, excavated the toxic soil, and capped the site properly this time. And my ridge? It's quiet again. I bought the adjacent 50 acres, the land that used to be the clubhouse, for pennies on the dollar after the cleanup. I'm planting a new grove of walnut trees there. I kept the gate to the community, though. I hung a new sign on it. HOA rules. 1. Don't steal water. 2. Don't lie about dirt. 3. Don't mess with the orchard.
Every morning I drink my coffee on the porch. I hear the wind in the trees, the rush of the creek, and absolutely no leaf blowers. Sometimes when the light hits the valley just right, I think about Patricia. I wonder if she's organized an HOA in her cell block yet. I wonder if she's complaining about the color of the bars. But then the wind shifts, bringing the smell of ripening apples, and I forget all about her. And that is how a hydrologist utilized the power of heavy rocks and heavy documentation to crush a corrupt HOA. If you enjoyed this story, please smash that like button, it really helps the channel, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story of sweet, sweet revenge. I'll see you in the next one.